I'd like to begin this unit of the class with a few introductory remarks about style, and what style means, at least for our purposes, and at least to me for this unit of the class. So, what is style? Or maybe a better way of putting it is, what is not style? And what I'd like to first talk about is a few common myths about style and the definition of style. Or if not myths, interpretations of what style is that is different from the way that we'll be talking about style as it relates to writing. Not style number one is everyone has their own style. Well, if you think about this for a second, this actually isn't true in all kinds of different ways. And the easiest example of this is fashion. There's a we share styles of clothing, for example, in that we may different kinds of groups or different kinds of people may wear similar kinds of boots or shoes or shirts or things like that. You may identify with the kind of shirt that people wear, which is Abercrombie and Fitch, although that seems to have gotten a lot less popular than it used to be, or UGG boots, or certain kinds of baseball caps or something like that. And in more general terms, fashion seems to be associated with certain gender issues and class issues and things like that. So in other words, even when people try to dress in a style that is unconventional, they're making a comment on how fashion is actually shared by other groups. It's a little bit like saying that everyone has their own opinion, which also isn't actually true. When we say in our culture, you're entitled to your own opinion, what we're really saying is, or that everyone's entitled to your own opinion, what we're really saying is, I don't want to talk about this topic anymore. But really, an opinion matters, be it an opinion about a political candidate, about a restaurant, about a issue like abortion or something like that. Opinions only really matter to the extent that we share them with others, or that they're in contrast with others. If you were alone on a desert island, and your opinion of where you would build the hut would be irrelevant, because you would build the hut wherever it is that you wanted to build it. If you were with a group, then you might have some sort of debate about that, and that's where opinion comes into play. Like I said, everyone has their own style is myth number one. Myth number two, style restricts my creativity. You're giving me all these rules, I can't do things different. Well, that's not true. I mean, after all, one of the first basic rules, especially of creative writing, is that you've got to know the rules before you can break them effectively. And beyond that, I think that rules actually end up defining what actually is creative. They set up the rules, the boundaries for within which you can do different creative things. If you don't have these basic rules, then what you end up with is a sort of Calvin ball sort of scenario. Now, I don't know how many people remember Calvin and Hobbes, but Calvin used to play an imaginary game with his imaginary friend / stuffed tiger Hobbes called Calvin Ball, in which every move was made, for every move, a different rule was made up. Now, this is all fine and good for a comic and for childhood play, but imagine if, for example, you were playing basketball, and every time that a person got the ball, they changed the rules of the game. This would become very, very frustrating. And how it applies to writing is, imagine if every time you tried to write something, you changed the rules for how you were going to communicate, even down to the point of changing language and punctuation and grammar and all kinds of stuff like that. Well, this would be a huge problem if you were actually wanting to communicate with other people. So no, the rules are part of what sets the boundaries for what counts as creative, as opposed to confusing, ultimately. Rule number three, style myth number three, perhaps the most important one, is it doesn't matter, because good writing is good writing and good style is good style. You know, if there's one thing that I hope that you don't, that you come away with from this class and from this unit is that this is not true. This cannot possibly true, because good writing and good style, it always depends on context and purpose and goals. I mean, if you were applying for a job and you wanted to, you had to write documents to send to the employer for this, you wouldn't write them in the form of a poem, would you? Even if you were applying for a job as a poet. I mean, can you imagine that letter? Please, sir, consider my application for your position in the accounting department. department. You wouldn't do that. You would include a cover letter that follows a certain form. You would include a resume that follows a certain form. And different kinds of jobs may have different sorts of expectations like this. But the point is that you wouldn't just just because you wrote a really good poem does not mean that it would translate as a really good letter of application. So with this in mind, what exactly is style? Well, traditionally, style is one of the 5 canons of rhetoric, one of the 5 parts of rhetoric that people study. You've got invention, which is how you come up with various things. Arrangement, it's pretty self-explanatory. Style, which is divided up in a bunch of different issues. Memory, which we talked a little bit about with when we discussed Plato's Phaedrus, because memory was very important to the ancients. And delivery, which is essentially how you would speak in hand gestures and things like that. Style tends to be divided up into different categories. High style would be the kind of thing that you might see in a court of law. Middle style is sort of what I'm doing right now, in the sense that it's a practice, rehearsed sort of speech like I would deliver in a classroom. And low style is essentially conversation, although the Greeks and Romans divided this up in tons of other different ways. And a lot of the stuff that we think of nowadays being part of literature, metaphor, hyperbole, etc., are actually originally elements of rhetorical style. This idea of style being about correctness, about grammar and punctuation, all that kind of stuff, is really kind of a modern invention. Style is how you write or say something depending on what it is you are writing or saying and what it is that you are trying to accomplish. If you're writing a letter to your grandma to thank her for the $10 she sent you for your birthday, you would call upon certain stylistic conventions, dear grandma, etc., etc., and you would probably write that out on a piece of paper. If you were texting a friend of yours about meeting at the party or at a bar, you would probably use a different set of stylistic conventions. What up, dude? Where are you? And then like maybe the @ symbol or something like that. So in other words, it depends on what is you're trying to accomplish, who you're, and what is you're trying to say. You'll also note too, with my 2 examples there, that style depends a lot on the technologies you use to present a message. There's certain kinds of stylistic conventions to the text message, certain stylistic conventions to a website, to a blog, to a wiki, and also to conventional print. So in the nutshell, that's style. Keep this in mind as we progress through this unit, because it'll help you navigate the readings and the assignment.